Hi, my name is Jared Krawitz. Welcome to Closter Farm and Livestock Company in Closter, New Jersey, here in Bergen County. We're up in the northeast corner, just 15 minutes from the George Washington Bridge into New York City. We're the only certified organic farm in our county and the only certified livestock farm in New Jersey. We're very happy to welcome NOFA-New Jersey and the USDA's Transition to Organic Partnership Program, TOPP, here today for a tour and show you around so you can see our integrated crop and livestock situation. We'll see our broilers and our veggies, and we'll be focusing today on one of the core values of the TOPP program, which is education for how other growers can transition to integrating livestock and vegetables in an organic manner into their farm. Your chickens would supposedly, in some linear fashion, consume from their closest access to water and shade and protection outwards, right? But it's not the case. The train is not even. We do not have consistent pasture. We do have many other variables like our perimeter of trees. We have 2 or 3 red-tailed hawks that live on the property. We have foxes, we have groundhogs, we have raccoons, opossums, all sorts of things that might want to eat a chicken or come at a chicken. We have, we live in a semi-residential area, so I've never seen one on the property, but I'm sure there are rats somewhere. There are voles, all sorts of things. And these things might not be a predator, but they could hurt, they could spread disease, they could do something to our chickens. So the final thing is that we have vegetables. So if our chickens were allowed to roam free, in this sense of like the freest, most free choice life for a chicken, they would go to the most tasty, nutrient-dense things in their vicinity, which is our crops. So that can't happen. So one choice is to say, okay, cool, let's fence off our whole situation over there. Now the next thing is that I want fresh chicken every 2 weeks. How do I make sure that my chickens aren't commingling? Like now I have to go out there and catch these chickens. So when I go to catch them, how hard is that going to be? Because you're doing it probably late at night. I don't want them sitting in the crates for a ton of time. So I'm really thinking about the logistics of it, how much labor it's going to take. So I prefer them to be contained because it's a lot easier for me to get to them. So that's when I'm getting them out. How about when I'm getting them in? How do I control where they go every day? How do I help them choose the highest and best things for them? So my goal is to protect them, keep them watered, keep them safe, and keep them growing at a clip that's still economical. So these rangers act as a really good vessel for us to house their supplemental feed, which we get from Lakeview Organic Grains up in Penn Yan, New York. It's automated water hooked up to our wells, so we're not coming out here and filling up troughs. We're not having to, cycle out stuff and wash out stuff. It's just a quick spritz of apple cider vinegar and in between batches, organic sanitizing solution, Sanidate, to make sure we're not passing diseases along. It's a really easy contained system. Every single day, they get fresh pasture. At this stocking rate, they barely go through this much pasture in a day as it is. So we started the farm with plot 1, which when you guys look out here is the first plot closest to us. We're right here on this corner of the barn.
How big is one?
One is 8 beds that are each 2.5 feet wide with 18-inch pathways in between. So from the edge of bed 1 to the edge of bed 8 is 30.5 feet, which is 8 beds, 7 pathways, all internal. And these plots, due to how they're set up, kind of decrease in length, but most of our beds on the farm are 50 feet or 100 feet. So we go by 125 feet, 125 square feet or 250 square feet, which keeps things pretty standard and it makes it just really easy for our math, for making sure we know spacing, and wherever we rotate crops on the farm, everything's kind of the same. So we started in 1, expanded to 2, and then went across 9, 8, 7 in that progression in our first year. As we were doing that, we cover cropped 4, 5, 6, and 3, and then 10 and 11 later that season, and marched our chickens through that cover crop that season. At the end of that season, we planted garlic in plots 10 and 11. Now remember, we were talking about how long you have to wait from applying that manure. So planting garlic takes 9 months, right? So we planted in late October that year and harvested in July. So more than enough time, even though the garlic was touching that manure when it was fresh, it wasn't consumed until July or probably August of the following year after it had been cured. So there's no contamination. And again, if you go back to that example, even if the garlic scapes, because we grow hardneck garlic, had shot up in really early April, we were still 90 days away, and scapes grow from the top, so they'd never touch the soil. Make sense? Cool. Our goal now that we are pretty cropped out everywhere is to try to rotate at least 1 full plot of cover crops through. Now, you can see here it's a little tight to access if you have crops and crops to squeeze rangers in. So when possible, we like to grow cover crops, and then at the end of the season have the chickens run across those crops. And now what we can do is in the last 4 beds of 11, and we should do this actually, is we're about to pull out our second succession of summer squash, so a heavy feeding crop that succeeded carrots. And I think carrots was the first crop that year. So we usually crop out all of our beds between 2 to 6, even 7, 8 crops, depending on where it is in the field and how intensive it's going. If it's a quick root or a quick green, it could see 8 crops in a season if we're doing arugula and radish and lettuce greens. And if it's doing something more like carrots and then summer squash, it might only get 2 or 3 crops that season. So after those 2 heavy feeders and the carrots and the summer squash, we're going to do a round of cover cropping. And that's a great opportunity to also have our chickens march on through that area. So some of the things we were talking about is like distance of those animals from a crop right near it. So this plot is on an incline such that if we were to graze animals up here and then it were to have a heavy rain, we could have some issues there. So as we plan to graze animals in here, we'll be cognizant of how far is the next bed of a ready-to-eat crop, right? We want to make sure that we're not just pulling radishes right out and handing them to people. We want to be really smart about that. So further on down the plot, we have plasticulture, that woven landscape fabric. Like I was saying, we'll have cabbage, right, which is protected immediately from the soil base below it. And in between, we have some quick crops. So we'll just have to be really smart about when we're doing it, how we're doing it, and it may be that we choose to graze the chickens only on 2 of the beds and leave 2 beds in between as a gap to kind of soak up that possibility. And we'll just kind of play it by ear and make sure we make some smart decisions as it comes in. But you're just looking at, you know, in all things farming, you're really looking at what nature has handed to you, the best choice you can make with the opportunity. And we can plan all we want about, okay, let's have these guys move through here in 2 weeks after we planted X, Y, Z, but in reality, it'll get there when it gets there, and we'll deal with what's there when it's there.